The Broad Street Review podcast is an extension of Broad Street Review, Philly's home for arts, culture, and conversation, an online arts and culture journal covering the greater Philadelphia area. I'm your host, Darnell Radford. Today on the podcast, producing artistic director Deborah Block and board chair Desiree Solera talk about 25 years in Exile, what to expect from a 25th anniversary season, how a pandemic called for adjustments, and what the future of Theater Exile might look like in 25 years. Here is my interview with Deborah Block and Desiree Solera. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I'm in the virtual studio because that's still where we live. And I'm here with Theater Exile, and I'm talking to the leaders today. I'm talking to producing artistic director, Deborah Block, and board chair, Desiree Solera. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome back. Deb, welcome back to the podcast. Desiree, welcome to the podcast.
Great Thank you. Both. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
25 years of Theater Exile. Woo! Congratulations.
Yes.
You made it. What a ride it has been. Not just because of the world that we live in, but because of the artistic journey that Theater Exile has taken us on. I was looking back through the history of Theater Exile productions, and every single production has been a ride. You're the kind of organization that you cannot leave the theater without having a lot to say about the work you just experienced. And that is something I've always appreciated about Theater Exile. And on other interviews, I say, I should just work at Theater Exile. I have so much positive to say about. And I love having conversations with Theater Exile. So congratulations on 25 years. And let's start by bringing our listeners up to speed. What has been going on for 25 years in Exile? What is that like?
What a huge question, right? Huge question. I mean, everyone knows who's done something for so long. It both feels like an incredible amount of time, but also you're dealing with everything step by step. And this past year and a half, 2 years, how long ever it's been, has been sort of a mind erased and time is warped. Yeah. So it's been both really exciting, and I would say what is incredibly exciting is that I think Theater Exile has always been a scrappy company that faced every challenge, and that we've taken that attitude and put it on stage, but we were faced with major challenges, and it's been a wonderful team that took us through this pandemic and kept us all working and creating work and making comments on the society and being part of the conversation. And so 25 years have been wonderful, but the 25 years have led us to this very moment. And I'm really happy about where we are right now.
I mean, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, it's been a crazy ride. The last year obviously is unprecedented, but I almost feel like it is a really great springboard to begin our next 25 years. So if this is our baseline for year 25, then we have nowhere else to go but up, I think, also, because it's almost like it's a brand new paradigm in order to make theater. So I'm really excited about what the future holds. You know, It's not just about looking back, but it's about looking forward and what we can do next.
And it is exciting. So Desiree, we don't always have the opportunity to talk to board chairs.
We like to hide a little bit sometimes.
Yes. But you're very much a part of what makes so many things happen in so many of the great organizations in Philadelphia's arts and cultural landscape. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you made your way to Exile?
Well, I think it's very funny because I started with Theater Exile about a little more than 20 years ago. I accidentally found myself, pushed myself to a stage manager role with Rocket Man, which I think was in the 2000 season, but you don't quote me on that. It was just, I basically said, hey, I'll do anything you want. Let me do something. And I was still in college. And that, just progressed. I loved the team. I loved the work. It was always new and exciting and different. And I liked kind of feeling like I was in charge of things. When you're 20 years old, you're not in charge of anything. So when you get to be a production stage manager, it's like, hey, I've got a little bit of power here. That's kind of sweet. And then it just grew to a love of learning how to produce theater. And I would never say that I know everything that Deb does, because Deb's got her hands in every single function of the theater company. But having been here for as long as I have, you do glean a lot of information and you do learn about the whole process. And I feel like I've grown up with Exile. Mm-hmm. And so I have part of my identity is with Theater Exile. And I enjoy watching that change and grow and explore new avenues every year. So, I mean, I guess that's a little bit about me. I'm a Theater Exile diehard,
That's great. I think it's, I also think it's great to hear from people who have been with companies for so long and have assumed many different roles, because it shows that, like you said, you get sort of pulled in and you're like, what can I do? How can I help? And you end up just grabbing on to things like every chance you get. So, and now you're the board chair.
I am.
That's pretty awesome.
I think so too. I think it's been a lot. It's hard work. It's a lot more involved than I ever knew it was going to be. And you face a lot of different challenges. They're sitting on the board and going, yes, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. And then when you're board chair, it shifts a little bit, but it shifts in a very gratifying way. And we are in service of Exile's vision, and in this case, in Deborah's vision. So we're here to just be the best stewards of Theater Exile that we can, and to be able to be part of that is very rewarding.
Yeah. So Deb, you assumed producing artistic director role in 2013, and Desiree, you became the board chair in 2018.
Yes.
But I bet you neither one of you ever thought that you would have to deal with a global pandemic.
Yeah.
So I would be very interested to know what were some of the thoughts that were going on in your head, spring of 2020, as in, I'm trying to think of the last production I saw before, all the, maybe you should stay at home. Actually, you should stay at home kind of, directives came into place. And I believe it was Babel.
Yes.
By Jackie Goldfinger. Mm-hmm. And so where were you? I mean, like, take us back to that moment and tell us, like, what was going on in Exile, at that time? What were you thinking about, and how are you going to get through the rest of the season?
I mean, I remember when we were going through Babel, things were starting to percolate, and people were elbow bumping, and the audiences were getting smaller through the run. But we were one of the fortunate ones where we got to actually finish the run of the show. We finished it on Sunday, and everything was shut down on Monday.
Yeah.
When on Facebook, everyone's saying, what was the last meal you had? I was like, with the cast of Babel. That was the last thing that we were able to do, and we were thrilled. It was part of a rolling world premiere, so I was thrilled to be able to produce it, because I know some of the other productions had to go on hold. And initially, if you recall, we didn't know how bad it was going to be. We hadn't started rehearsals for our next show, which was orphans. And we were negotiating with the cast. How far can we push it off? Talking with the board, what decisions we could make. And I remember having a discussion, and one of the cast members had a gig in the summer, so we could only move it like a couple weeks later. And we were wondering if that was going to be okay. And there was a lot of back and forth going on. And obviously all of it was moot. It didn't matter. We had to completely shut down operations. And everything we did, we kept moving forward, but it definitely felt like we were inventing the wheel with every decision. Every discussion was heavy and fraught because you had to have plan A, B, and C. And I don't know how you felt, Des. We had so many conversations, and it was exhausting. It was good, but exhausting.
I remember that time period as, from the board perspective, obviously we knew eventually that we would have to cancel Orphans. But I remember from the board, it was, what does Theater Exile look like in a COVID era? What can we even do? Is there anything we can do? And when will audiences feel comfortable coming back? If we can come back. I mean, there was a point in time when, we had to cancel our fundraiser. It wasn't just obviously Orphans, it was our fundraiser, which is a huge part of our yearly budget. And everybody did. It wasn't just us. I mean, obviously everybody was affected by this, but it was really just trying to figure out, do we even produce the next season? When it became clear that things were not changing, things were not opening up, it was do we not shut down Exile, but cease production for a year and see where we come back, or do we try to barrel through? And if we try to barrel through, what does that look like? And it was a lot of conversations with the board, because our board ranges, 30 plus years in age, and people, I would definitely say that the older contingent of the board was like, we're not going anywhere. We're at home, we're staying home, and we're not going anywhere. And if you can produce something that we'll watch, then we will do that. But other than that, we're not going to be your audience. And I think people heard that from a lot of their constituency, not just their board. But I remember that being just very fraught. Like, what do we look like now? What can we do now?
One of we had an idea that we wanted to move forward, but we didn't know exactly what the pieces were going to look like. So the first decision was figuring out the structure. So we're going to do what Theater Exile does, but how it looks will be different. So we decided we're going to produce 3 shows. We're going to continue with new play development. We're going to continue with our education, and our Out of Exile thing, the outdoor show, was still in the development phase. So that was fine. So that was moving along fine. We were able to put our development work online, and our education work pivoted beautifully online as well. So the productions, the season that we were going to choose, we basically had to go back to we had to go back to the basics and say, my thing was, I didn't want to do a piece of theater that looked like we were shoving it into a box. We wanted to select work that could be either way. And so it was actually Jeremy Gable's piece of D-Pad where it made me say, the one that was about gamers, that made me go, okay, we can do this. This exists in the world. I didn't want to call it theater, but because theater to me is breathing in air of the person next to you and sharing space. But we could have an offering, we can have an artistic experience, we could do something that sparked conversations. And Jeremy's play let me know it could happen.
Yes.
And Jeremy's play D-Pad, which was written for gamers, he actually theatricalized it so it could be on the stage. But in truth, all those people would always be in different rooms. And so all we needed to do was adjust it to make it naturally be in the form that we were presenting. And Sin Eaters was also about content management. And again, Matt did a beautiful job in the direction of it. And so it felt like as long as I wasn't trying to do theater in a box, at least for Theater Exile, everyone did different things. That was our choice. And then the third play, Passover, takes place outside. So I'm like, we can do it outside, and so that was the big decision. Deciding we were going to have our same footprint, we were just going to change the form in which it was presented.
Yes.
Yeah. I had great conversations about all three of those productions. I very much enjoyed DPAD. I loved Sin Eaters and Passover, the experience altogether. I was there a day when I think a helicopter was flying over at like the most opportune moment, and it was like, this live theater, and it fit, and it really worked out, and it was such an experience, just being out in that space, but also the intimacy of having the audio and the headsets was really helpful for that.
I mean, Passover was an emotional experience for me. I mean, just even the content of the play is highly emotional anyway, but just being back in the space, like Deb said, sharing space with people, even if you had the headphones on to keep it, contained, individually contained, you were still sharing space with people. And I remember feeling very, choked up in the moment of like, okay, we can actually gather again. And this was before Delta variant and all of those other craziness. So it actually felt as close to normal as I've felt in well over a year at that point. And so I loved that play. That was my favorite play we did last year. I thought it was fabulous. But just being in the space with everybody and watching something live was cathartic in so many ways. It was really lovely.
Yeah, it was kind of like a reunion to sit in that space and see people you haven't seen in person for a while. You're like, oh my, yeah, it's safe. This is great. How have you been? As if we haven't talked on social media before, but like being in here. I want to talk a little bit more about the business of Exile, because in 2019 you move into your brand new space after the garage has been torn down. That was Studio X, and you move into the new Theater Exile. You open up with an oak tree, and we're just like, oh my God, we're about to get used to this wonderful new venue in South Philly, and now you can't be in there. So like, how do you manage the fact that you have a venue you can't physically have people in and then still produce a season when you're thinking about like, the revenue that you would get from these productions is designed to like help take care of the building that no one can actually, be in, because of the protocols. Like, what's the thought? I mean, what's going on in the mind of Exile at that time for that?
Well, I'll say one of the things I felt we were pretty fortunate. All things considered, I feel very fortunate, and we had certain things set up. We had already, because we're a small company, Autumn Valdez, our general manager, and I at that point were the only full-time staff. Everyone else was part-time. And one of my mantras is, what I can't offer you in like a high-paying salary, I can offer you in humanity. And so we've already had a system for people working remotely. If someone had to be home, if it didn't make sense for them to come in. So we already had a system. We just had to pump it up a little bit higher. And we just make sure everyone had the computers that they needed at home, things like that. But there was already an infrastructure in place. A lot of companies had to start from the beginning on that, but we didn't. So we were pretty fortunate in that way that we had already had a little bit of that going on. And Autumn and I tag teamed on terms of coming in, and then we figured out systems of who would come in when. And again, that now that like we're in that groove, that was not the hardest part. And I will say that just take a moment to sort of give thanks to that the foundations were incredibly flexible and that our supporters were still present. And, people were making decisions. There are some people that moved over to social services, and I said, all you could do is say thank you for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And, but oddly, the timing, if this had to happen, kind of worked out all right. We knew that moving into this building, the next few years were going to be a little bit crazy time in terms of us figuring out our new business model. So we had actually already built into our finances from our capital campaign a little bit of a cushion for our staffing. So between the foundations and our donors and that, we were able to keep our team intact.
Yes.
So I actually didn't have to furlough anyone. And because we actually had a team intact, we were able to produce and create things and be creative and problem solve. If I had to do that, then it's one thing begets the other. It would have been harder to actually do the work that we needed to do in order to produce the season. But we remained a team, and so that was really helpful.
That's great. I hope our listeners are taking notes. Add a buffer. It's always good to have a cushion.
Yeah, I mean, so our scenario now, we're just figuring out now what we were hoping to figure out 2 years ago. But, so it's not like everything is perfect. We're just adapting and so now we're figuring out our business plan, what our business model is going to be moving into the future, because really these past 2 years have been about surviving and honing down and figuring out who we are and what our strengths are and relying on our strengths, which I feel like we have. I'm incredibly proud of last season.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Absolutely.
And like a weird stat, because I look at numbers all the time, a weird stat is that, and take a moment to thank our donors. It is true that the average donation of I'm not talking about our big donors. I'm talking about the average donor. That average donation went down, but we actually had more of them. We had more donations, more people supporting. People didn't leave us. People stayed with us. And I think it was because of the programming and because long-term connections, whatever it is. So I'm incredibly grateful for that.
I mean, theater in a very, if you're going to produce theater, it's not just, you have to produce great theater, obviously, and Theater Exile does that in spades as far as I'm concerned. But it's also relationship building. It is 100% focused on our audience in many ways. And we have a wonderful outreach program. We have staff, that Kylene is fabulous at what she does. And just, we have a wonderful support team that makes sure that our audience knows what we're doing, what we're up to. And we continue to build those relationships even through this crisis. So I think that's, the staff at Exile we're skinny, we're lithe, but we're strong. So it's a good thing.
Yeah. So now that you have produce a hybrid season, do you see a future for virtual stages as a normal addition? Because the way I think about this is the same way we added an education department. Why can't we add a virtual stage? There were so many viewpoints where it was like, I can't wait till we can stop doing this. And I was like, why would you stop doing this? There's so many opportunities to bring up and coming work and artists to a virtual stage. And I think there's more opportunity for a virtual stage in what would be considered your off season, or like your down, those times where you constantly, you can continuously engage your audience, without having to be on your physical stage. So what are your thoughts on the future of virtual stages?
Well, what's so interesting is, I picked, again, this season was picked with the idea that a couple of our shows, if we needed to go back online, could do that. We had conversations with the playwrights. This first play that we're doing, is the entire play is an audition tape to be on Extreme Home Makeover. And so we could actually do the tape. Like, so we could do it. And our last play, Today Is My Birthday, the characters aren't in the room together with each other. It's about disenfranchisement, and it's so resonant with today. We could actually do that in other ways. And I would love to. The only thing right now is that I think it might be just physically hard for us. We are still on not steady ground. It's just our resources right now. So I don't actually discount having an additional thing. What I would love is to have like a supplemental thing, like, oh, you saw Extreme Home Makeover. Here's now you can see the audition tape online, and like to be able to do supplemental offerings as opposed to like replacement offerings. And for people who don't want to come to the theater, then they could do that. I am just, for a company of our size, I would love to do that. I don't know if we have the wherewithal and the resources to do it all right now, but I don't think it's something that has to go away. And I certainly know that our readings this year are going to be online. Our attendance at our new play development stuff were like off the charts because they could be.
Right.
And so we'll definitely be keeping some elements online. And as we grow, I think it'll be an additive to it.
Yeah.
So I agree with Deb. However, I think so. Didn't you find, Deb, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you find Extreme Home Makeover through an online virtual forum that were even able to produce this show this year because you found it because you weren't able to go to Los Angeles to see the original reading?
Yeah.
There was no travel. So the fact that some local playwrights are now being seen in with much larger audiences is amazing and huge, and it speaks to the outreach of what a virtual audience can do. I had friends over in Scotland that saw D-Pad and Sin Eaters last year because they can't make it on a plane to come here, but they were able to see what I finally do, what I do, and what I help facilitate. So there is that outreach there, but it's also, I mean, the Met's been doing their opera in a theater series for years. So the functionality is now there. I think people are very precious with theater because it is such an experience live, and I never want to take that away. But as Deb said, the additive portion of that can reach so many more people with disabilities now have access to seeing theater, which not all theater can be done fully ADA. And we wish that it was, but it can't always be done that way. So it's fabulous that we have that. It opens up the audience in many different ways. I would love to see it utilized. Again, our personal resources, Theater Exile's resources may not be there yet, but that doesn't mean it won't be there in a couple of years.
Yeah.
So,
and it doesn't mean that there aren't potential donors listening who might want to make sure that happens.
Yeah, I mean, again, especially like those two shows.
Oh my gosh,
it's ripe for it. It'd be wonderful to do it, and I haven't given up on it yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think there's a chance to expand the conversation. I am a little precious with theater. I think theater.
I understand. I get it too.
But I mean, I loved our Exiled with Exile offerings, which we did like a crazy amount of conversations and free workshops and post-show discussions. I love that we didn't have to go to a specific show, and we were able to have the playwright from Sin Eaters for a discussion. That was awesome. And to be able to do that online. So I think there's a lot of ways to do that.
Yeah. I tell you what I love the most about the virtual experiences over the past, 2 years, was that we were able to have a conversation with the audience that we could not have in person, through the chats and through the comments and so on. And that was like this extra thing that was like, yes, they're like rooting this thing on and commenting in ways that you can't when you're in the theater, and not to pull away from the live theater experience, but there's also that that virtual experience, that there's something beneficial there too. And I worked for an organization that you know, when their main theater uh, sold out, they did a simulcast in a smaller theater, and it kind of reminded me of that. Where I
Yeah.
was like, okay, so that simulcast is like a different kind of experience, and who knows, you know, somewhere down the road we might see that sort of. So you can buy a ticket to be with us in person, or you can buy this virtual ticket where you're still a part of the experience, and maybe there's sort of this and hello to our virtual viewers as well, you know, or something that would be kind of fun, or like an opportunity to see it again.
Yeah.
You know, you were here live, and you want to see it again. Is there a part that you're just still trying to wrap your head around? Half price virtual ticket, you know, or
Right.
something like that. You know, I just see so many opportunities, and I see the possibilities in it, but I just, you know, I just remember hearing everyone like being longing for like being back in the space, and you know, it's like, yes, but what if this was kind of here to stay? How do we make it all work? So I'm very interested to see how that sort of folds into everything we love so much, you know, as we move forward through this. But I want to shift a little bit to let's take a trip down memory lane and talk about tell us about some of your favorite Exile productions over the years.
Oh my gosh. There are so many.
Yes, there are. And there's so many venues too. When you think about, you were at the Adrian at one point, you were at Plays and Players at one point,
Mhm.
Studio X, and now here at
We
the
did
new theater.
Lithuanian
Yeah,
society a couple
Lat-
times.
yeah, the
Latvian,
Latvian
Latvian society.
Society.
Sorry. Yes.
Hmm.
We were at where Philly Shakes
Yeah.
was
Hmm.
performing
Oh my
back in
gosh.
the early days. The Cake Club.
Okay.
Um, yeah, yeah, just tons of different spaces, and that was sort of the identity in the early days. And what was one of the benefits of that is you could choose the venue to the needs of the play. And
Yes.
so, which is why, like, when Theater Exile got the space, the original space at 13th and Reed, and never intended to build a performance venue. It was just for rehearsals. But going back to some of the plays, does one step out for you?
As you said this, I mean, I had about 10 roll through my head, depending on whether I was the stage manager or I just enjoyed watching it. I mean, I remember the first time I was absolutely blown away with production value, and it was Young and RC, it was Mr. Marmalade. I loved every aspect of Mr. Marmalade. I thought it was so much fun to do, and it was such a witty piece. And I loved all of the production value. Mr. Marmalade, I thought was fabulous. Lieutenant Finishing War, I thought was great. I remember Cock. I really loved Cock. Um, Gosh, I mean, North Plan was hysterical. I thought North Plan was great. Killer Joe was one of my favorites because I worked with a ton of people there that I never had a chance to work with before, which I thought was fabulous.
Hmm.
Um, More recently, The Invisible Hand. I loved Babel. Passover was great too. I don't know, Deb. You say. I mean, this is a trip down memory lane. I've loved so many of them.
I thought The Whale was an
Oh my God, the whale. Yes.
incredible production. I thought,
What a great use of that space as
yeah,
well.
that was a
We
great use of that space.
That was
Tom and Matt. Yeah.
that was a show that my entire family came to. Not my family. They are not theater going folk. They think I'm weird most of the time for the shows, but I insisted that they all come. I had aunts and uncles. Everybody cried. Oh my gosh, the whale was fabulous. Love that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was one in the Wayback Machine that I really enjoyed was gruesome playground injuries.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, that was great. Charlotte and Keith, they were just off the
Hunter
chart.
Gatherers was
Yeah,
really great. I loved
yeah,
I loved Hunter Gatherers. I thought that was in the Adrian, right?
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Buzzer, I really
Oh yeah, Buzzer was really good.
enjoyed. I enjoyed Guards at the Taj, just like
Mm.
slapstick in the hands and all over the place. It was just wonderful.
Smoke.
Oh, yeah,
I adored
Smoke.
Smoke.
Smoke is one of my favorites.
Oh, you just kind of leave shattered. in the best way possible. And just, yeah, I loved Smoke.
I
It's
had
like
such,
that final moment of
Yeah,
Smoke just brings it all into perspective. I would just remember sitting there going like,
yeah, yeah.
wow, and I definitely remember having a long conversation on my walk home. Like I was supposed to drop my friend off at the train station. We ended up walking all the way downtown, still talking about it. And yeah,
Smoke
Rise
was
of the
fabulous.
Taj. I
Yeah.
mean, as soon as those hands, come out in that one scene, I don't know if somebody walked out at that time, but I remember the audience just being so uncomfortable for so many of those moments. And there have been a lot of productions that really spoke to what was going on in our community at the
Yeah.
time too. I remember conversations I had about Buzzer in 2017 was talking about gentrification, and even
Yeah.
though that's set in Brooklyn, there was something going on in my neighborhood in Point Breeze, and we were able to have a really great conversation around that, and that sort of stood out for me. And Glengarry Glen Ross,
Oh yeah. Oh
like
yeah.
what a great use of that space as well.
Christchurch Christchurch is a great space to do all theater, and I love Christchurch.
yeah. Dan Hodge there's a moment when Dan Hodge is on top of the balcony just doing, I thought the staging was really wonderful. And
I remember being very much involved at Plays and Players when American Buffalo was on the main
Oh yeah.
stage, and that set was so busy.
Oh, that was a
There
beautiful
was
set.
so much on the stage, and just seeing it, you was like, wow, this is amazing. And I think don't quote me, there was a card game like after hours, either in the lobby, I think I remembered, and I think it might have been Pete Pryor and a few people, and I just remember like, wow, I can't believe I'm here, like in this moment. There were just so many moments that I can pinpoint to Theater Exile. And I don't know if I had told you this before, Deb, but I used Theater Exile as a case study when I was studying arts administration at NYU. I had talked about this scrappy company whose mission was very much, any neighborhood of Philadelphia. And I felt like you guys do such a great job of, with your selections. They really feel like it's something that could happen here. It's like, yeah, I can see that. And so I've just been very appreciative of that. And of course, there's so many productions to just think about it, and the whole experience of an oak tree with all the second actors who came through over that, and then thinking about how many people have been a part of these productions that have moved on to so many different things. The Lieutenant of Inishmore, Paul Felder. Like, who thought that he would be an MMA fighter?
oh my God, he did. He was all
right. Crazy.
Yes. But it was just. I always think that's amazing. Yeah.
When I was production stage manager for the Exile, I always gauged how long my night was going to be by how much blood was on the stage, and because Theater Exile we've had some bloody shows, and I remember watching Lieutenant of Inishmore going, I'm so glad I am no longer the production stage manager.
Early in the run, it took just as long to clean up was the length of the show.
Yeah.
It took just as long to clean up as it did, and it got tighter as it went along. But that was a thing, and this is much about the drainage and how we deal with the blood and capturing and things like that. It was intense.
Oh,
I mean, I love that production. It was a beautiful production, but it was bloody.
It was, well, and in the original production, they actually forgot to keep in mind the cost of the blood in the budget. And so then this is like my favorite Kickstarter story of all time. They did a blood drive on Kickstarter and to raise money for and then Leonard Haas ended up supplementing whatever, like he matched whatever was raised through the Kickstarter so that we could actually do it. And he became our blood and gore sponsor. It was just great. It was just everything about it, to do a blood drive on Kickstarter, you know, and yeah.
I forgot about that. That's hysterical. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh my
God. There's a lot to look back on at Exile to be proud of. And, you know, as we're in the 25th season. So now so tell us about this 25th season. What do we have to look forward to? So we've already been fortunate enough to experience the Ever Present in the beautiful park that's now newly renovated. And it's a compliment to Theater Exile as the new space as well.
It's wonderful. And I will just say that I was so thrilled that we did what we were going to do with that play, where we toured it to different parks in South Philly, and so that we could make this South Philly story a shared experience across the barriers that South Philly has, those imaginary barriers of Broad Street and, you know, and the different zip codes. So that was really lovely. So yes, we got to do it in our home park, but we got to actually share it in 5 different parks across South Philly. And our Eric Thomas and Brett Ashley Robinson were just beautiful together as the director and playwright. It was just amazing. So the next 3 shows, we're doing a play called Extreme Home Makeover, which it's about a Tejano family that is applying to be on Extreme Home Makeover. It takes place a number of years ago. And it's a play where everyone loves each other in the play, as a real family does. They love each other and they're mad at each other. But it's a story about grief and avoiding the truth and the pain of life and trying to persevere. And it's set on the backdrop of true like poverty, people hand to mouth, the working poor, and how difficult it is, yet how people manage to, it highlights how people manage to make it, how people manage to survive. And I wanted a play that had hope at its heart when we're all coming out of this very difficult time. We just have to remember what are the skills that we need in order to survive. And this play really illuminates that. The next play that we were looking to do, I can't see that very well.
You're blurry, Darnell.
I don't know.
Yeah. There it is. The motherfucker with the hat. That's the next one, the motherfucker with the hat, which is, it's been in our conversation for years. And the truth is, the last few years, we've had to do smaller casts, and this is 5 people and, you know, more. And we were so thrilled to be able to do it. And it's Ozzie Jones who was the director of Passover, is going to be leading it. And there's a bit of hope in it, in that people trying to figure out how to live, but it's a story, it's a backdrop, it's about addiction and the difficulties of surviving that. And it's funny and it's irreverent, and it's got Scott Greer, Jay Hernandez, Amanda Schoonover are all in it. It's going to be a friggin' all-star cast, and it's going to be an amazing show. But it's an important topic, a serious topic, but it's done like a lot of our shows with a little irreverence and humor, so that you can get to the heart of the story, which is, how do you survive? How do you take care of yourself?
That was a train ride read for me when I picked up at the drama bookshop. One of my many ones when you make that pilgrimage. I remember reading that one on the train ride home, just being like, wow.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy that, you know, I'm thrilled that we get to do it here in Philly. I mean, it's just, it's great. It feels like it was our play waiting for us. Yeah. And the last one is called Today Is My Birthday. It's a playwright we haven't worked with before, Susan Sunhee Stanton, and Kat Ramirez is going to be directing it. And we're thrilled to have Kat leading the show. And again, as I indicated before, it's a play about a woman who was working in New York and like life crashed and she moves back home to Hawaii. And for those of you who've traveled, you know that you always think, oh, I'm going to start fresh, but you like bring your baggage with you on that plane. And it's her learning how to connect, and she's isolated herself and isolated from her friends and her support system, and the structure of the play reinforces that. And again, it's a lesson that we need to learn, is how to connect. And sometimes, even though people are right there for us, it's really hard for us to open it up, and we're experiencing that as a society right now. How do we get back to connecting again? And it's hard. It shouldn't be, but it is. And so I think there's hope
I
in
know
all the plays.
these elbows, they're hard because we're a community that likes to hug and embrace, and it's so hard to not be able to do that sometimes. But at the same time, there are people who are like, I'm so glad we don't have to shake hands anymore. And you know, so it's interesting to see both sides, but there is this kind of like, you know, this intimacy that we feel a little bit of a restriction for now, that I think is very prevalent in our community. And I really hope that we get, you know, I long for the time we get back to a point where we feel so much safer and better around each other again.
Yeah, I think it'll come. I think it'll come. It's not too far away, but we will be changed.
Yeah.
We will be changed.
So this is the 25th season, and have you ever for a second, maybe a few minutes, maybe you're just sitting somewhere thinking like, what would the 50th season of Theater Exile look like? What would that be like? 45, 46, 20, 45, 46?
Well, I will say I do think about like, what does it mean for Theater Exile to grow? And it was shortly after, I guess a few years after we were kind of on financial solid ground. And the question was, what is Theater Exile's next steps? And it was not to make the core program bigger. Like, of course, we want more people and we want to get people there, but we wanted to keep the intimacy and the danger and the rawness of our plays. But that's when Out of Exile came about, where we said, well, you know, let's be a better friend to our communities. Let's make sure our connections, let's make sure the conversations around the plays are stronger. And so I think in 50 years, things are going to change. We'll have more of our holograms will be part of our designs, you know, we'll grow up. But I do hope that the plays that make you think and feel at the same time, that punch you in the gut and keep you guessing and cogitating and just working is still the heart of it. And that we're a part of a community. I hope those things stay. The way it looks will be different. The plays will be different. The voices will be different, but hopefully that will still be at the heart of it.
Yeah. So tell our listeners how they can experience this 25th anniversary season.
Well, our website is www.theaterexile.org, and theater is spelled with an R-E. So there's two little E's next to each other. So theaterexile.org. There you can find out about how to come to the theater. So we are doing it in person. It's all vaccinated. Our cast, everyone who's going to be in the theater at the time will be vaccinated. We will ask for proof of vaccination, and that everyone who is not performing on stage will be wearing a mask through the show. We just upgraded our HVAC system. We're MERV 13. We are like big filter systems. And we also made a decision to, at least currently, we are cutting our audiences in half. So that there will be space between people, so that you can breathe and literally and not really feel like you're packed on top of each other. we know that everyone was not ready to come back. So we wanted, for those who are, we wanted to make it as safe as possible. So we asked people to buy tickets ahead of time so that the coming in process is as easy as possible. But check out our website, theaterexile.org, and we'll be here all season.
When does the show open up, Deb?
Oh, what a good question. October 28th is our first audience, and it opens up formally in November. Come to previews; they're loads of fun, and see our new courtyard. We're going to put new designs. We're up. We never finished the theater, basically.
Right.
The structure is here, but we actually never finished adorning it. So we actually have mural artist Eric Okda is creating a mural in the entranceway of our new courtyard, which was created by Ruben Wade and Janice Smith.
Wow, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, so it's actually really comfortable. There's lovely. It's just a great place to come and sit and then come inside and join theater. Well,
great. Well, it's been wonderful being on this trip down memory lane with Exile in the last 25 years. I came to Philadelphia I came in 2000. I didn't really activate in the community until about 2005. Rep Radio started in 2009, and I started really getting into seeing more work that I wasn't producing, and so many productions that I can look back on that were notable have been from Theater Exile. So thank you for all the work that you've done up to this point, and we're looking forward to you continuing to do all of that work. And this season sounds as exciting as every other season that you've done, and looking forward to all of that. Deb Block, producing artistic director, Desiree Tolera, board chair. Thank you so much for taking the time to go down this memory lane with us and talk about Theater Exile's presence here. And I'm glad that everything is alive and kicking, and we look forward to this season as it shapes up.
Oh, thank you very much for having us, Darnell. This is very exciting.
So thank you so much for taking time. Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Contribute to find out how. Connect with us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter at Broad Street Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.